This is in preparation of the United States of America's semi-quincentennial 250th birthday. This year we're celebrating a lot of history that's been forgotten. I wrote a bunch of notes. I'm going to introduce the speakers, and thank you all for coming. So today we will explore many aspects of the American Revolutionary War, angles and stories not talked about, not explored, hidden, collecting dust waiting to be uncovered. This is a fight for independence, Woonsocket in the Revolution. Thank you for being part of this. We're all participating in saving lost history today. Share what you hear today so we can continue preserving the overlooked history here in Woonsocket. It is all important. Please give a round of applause to all of the guest speakers here today and everybody that has put together this event. So please give them a round of applause. We want to acknowledge the 13 Revolutionary War veterans buried here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. 1976, during the bicentennial, there was only one recorded Revolutionary War veteran known buried in the city of Woonsocket. This year, in preparation of this event and for the 250th, we dug a little deeper. We knew there was more Revolutionary War veterans buried in the city than what there was in 1976. So with this, we were able to locate 12 Revolutionary War veterans. A little further digging, we were able to find 2, and they were eventually became free men after serving during the American Revolution. We'll learn about a couple of those today. A couple of the billboards in the back showcase the patriots of color that fought for their freedoms during the American Revolution. A couple of speakers will touch base on that as we go further into the event. We also want to acknowledge all the sponsors. We have the Veterans Council of Greater Woonsocket here. We want to thank them. We've been able to submit 5 applications to the Veteran Affairs for 5 of the unmarked Revolutionary War veterans in Woonsocket. So hopefully by the end of this year, those 5 unmarked Revolutionary War vets will have new gravestones at their graves. We also want to acknowledge Beacon Pole Hill. It was a watchtower and a smoke tower in Cumberland. It was the signal to the colonialists throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts of the British invasion, of marching down, trying to come into what would be Woonsocket. At the time, it was Cumberland and Smithfield. On the west bank of the river, it was considered Smithfield. On the east bank of the Blackstone River, it was considered Cumberland. When Woonsocket was established, it split both of those towns together, and that's what we have today, Woonsocket. That's why these Revolutionary War veterans were completely forgotten. They served in Cumberland units and served in Smithfield units. Woonsocket wasn't even thought of at the time. The first Woonsocket term was used for the Woonsocket Falls Village in 1832. So all these veterans were from Cumberland and from Smithfield. So we have 3 guest speakers here today. We have Bjorn Bruckshaw, we have Don Hadkis, and we have Robert A. Gee. I think these guys are some of the most prestigious, and Bjorn, he's an up and coming researcher, independent researcher. I'll go into a little more about him in a minute. But I think these are the best qualified individuals to speak on this today. So thank them. I do want to acknowledge that Rhode Island does hold a unique distinction of being the first colony to officially declare its allegiance from King George III, passing the Act of Reunification on May 4th, 1776, 2 months before the National Declaration was signed. As you can see this right here. This is Woonsocket, Rhode Island's version that was sent out to all the counties and towns in the state, and this is specifically one that was given to Portsmouth. So it's a replica copy. The original copy will be on display July 11th at the Museum of Work and Culture in Woonsocket. So if you guys want to see the original, please go out to the museum on July 11th. Before the Second Continental Congress adopted the National Declaration, Rhode Island's General Assembly passed a legislative act that officially repelled the colony's allegiance to the British Crown. The act cited British abuses, including the deployment of fleets and armies to destroy the colonialist rights. This established Rhode Island as a sovereign state, an event celebrated locally every year as Rhode Island Independence Day. The United States Declaration of Independence was then adopted on July 4th, 1776, It's a historic document which the 13th American colony severed their political ties to Great Britain. Specifically, this is the Southwick Broadsides copy of the Declaration. So one of the 13 patriots buried in Woonsocket was a master carpenter, a private in the war, and a free slave. He fought for his freedom. He eventually built many houses, some which still stand today in what was Smithfield, and now a portion of North Smithfield. His name on the headstone at the Friends Quaker Cemetery and on many military and local records is written Walter Allen. Allen was a private in Colonel Christopher Greene's regiment in 1779 during the American Revolutionary War. And today we will hear about this specific regiment from our first speaker of the day, and his name is Bjorn Bruckshaw, an independent historian, author, and military veteran specializing in the American Revolution. He frequently focuses on overlooked military engagements, naval actions, and irregular warfare in the Northern Theater and New England. He heavily researches Rhode Island's military and naval contributions, battlefield decision-making, and lived experience of Revolutionary War veterans. Bjorn writes for prominent historical platforms, including the Journal of the American Revolution and the Emerging Revolutionary War blog. He is also the creator and host of Rhode Island, a YouTube channel dedicated to independent history analysis. Bruckshaw is a combat veteran of the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne Division, a Purple Heart recipient, having survived a roadside bombing injury during deployment in Iraq. His background as an infantryman directly shapes his approach to history, allowing him to analyze historical campaigns with a practical understanding of combat psychology, tactical layouts, and natural terrain. He also actively worked with the American Veterans Archaeological Recovery. Through this organization, he has participated in veteran-led battlefield excavations, including an archaeological dig at the Saratoga National Historic Park, where a couple of these veterans from Woonsocket, they fought in this battle. He uncovered artifacts from the Second Battle of Saratoga. We are honored and privileged to have him speak today, so without any further delay, please welcome our friend, Bjorn Bruckshaw.
Can you guys see the screen? Can you shut off the light a little bit? You want me to move the flag? Sure, we can move the flag.
Is it too heavy? Thank you. Whoa, careful. I should have thought of it earlier.
That's all right. Better?
Yes.
All right. Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right. So let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Bjorn Bruckshaw. I'm here with my lovely daughter, Grace. As was mentioned, I am a wounded combat vet. I grew up in Warwick, Rhode Island myself, not far from where the Greenes grew up. I served with the 82nd Airborne from 2001 to 2009. Unfortunately, in 2008, I was hit by a roadside bomb, almost lost my left arm, and spent years in rehab. And during that time, I ended up growing my love for the Revolutionary War. 2021, I ended up going on an archaeological dig by a company called AVAR, American Veterans Archaeological Recovery Group, and they did a dig up at the Second Battle of Saratoga. And as you can see here, we found a cannonball. One of the best times of my life. And then earlier this year, I was able to take my daughter back up there, and she was able to hold the same cannonball that we ended up finding. So that's pretty cool to see, history passing down, right? So I'm going to talk today about somebody who a lot of people don't know about. Christopher Greene. Everybody knows who Nathaniel Greene is, right? One of the best generals of the Revolutionary War. Well, his cousin, Christopher Greene, was born May 12, 1737, in Warwick, Rhode Island. He was a distant cousin of Nathaniel Greene, and not only that, but when him and Nathaniel Greene also joined the Kentish Guards. Kentish Guards were a militia group that were put on and built up in East Greenwich. And if you guys don't know who the Kentish Guards is, this is just quickly goes over who they were. They were ready to go march towards the battle to Lexington Concord and Bunker Hill, but the Rhode Island Assembly had stopped them right at the state line. They did participate in multiple different aspects protecting the Rhode Island coast in British raids. Christopher Greene was a lieutenant in the Kentish Guards. I'm just going to fly through these until my main crux right here is we're going to get to the Battle of Pines Bridge, which was unfortunately the passing of Christopher Greene in one of his big moments. So Christopher Greene was appointed a major in Varnum's regiment by the Rhode Island legislation in May 3rd, 1775. He was given a command of company and marched to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and which became part of the Army of Observation. In September 1775, George Washington actually placed Major Greene in command of a battalion in Cambridge that fell under Benedict Arnold to get ready. Anybody know what he was going to do? Battle of Quebec, right? The siege of Quebec. So he marched through Maine all the way up until the battle actually happened. So now Greene's up there, massive snowstorm, December 31st, 1775. There was General Montgomery on one column and Benedict Arnold on the other column. Montgomery was shot and killed instantly, and we know Benedict Arnold was wounded. They had a total of about 2,000 men between both columns. When Benedict Arnold fell, Daniel Morgan also was captured as well, and then so wasn't Christopher Greene. Now, for the next 8 months, Christopher Greene was held captive. He was there for 8 months, and then in a prisoner exchange in August of 1776, he ended up being exchanged for some British. So in January of 1777, the 9th Continental Regiment was renamed as the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, also known as the 1st African American Regiment. Well, on February 27th, Greene was promoted to colonel and placed in command of the regiment, all right, after Varnum was promoted brigadier general. So now, in October, after he gets command, he gets sent down to Fort Mercer, which is the Battle of Red Bank. And I'm going to tell you a quick story before we get into Fort Mercer. So we all know about the Battle of Trenton. Well, Rhode Island Regiment and some of the guys in his regiment were at the Battle of Trenton. And there was a Hessian commander who was a leader of the forces on the ground there named Von Dunham. He escaped that battle, but just remember that name for now, because I'm going to come back to you because it's kind of a funny story. So now, Greene's down at Fort Mercer. Well, Fort Mercer helped protect Philadelphia, right? It was built by, anybody know who Kosciuszko is? Thaddeus Kosciuszko, right? The great engineer. It was to help block the British ships on the Delaware River and protect Philadelphia. They worked with Fort Mifflin, which is right across the way from it as well, to protect that. The fort could hold about 1,500 men, but only about 600 men, between approximately 500 and 600 men were available, which we were between the 1st Rhode Island and 2nd Rhode Island regiments were there. Christopher Greene took that over when he got down. So now we come to the Battle of Red Bank, right? Remember that name, Von Dunham, right? So now Christopher Greene's down here, and a Hessian commander, now Von Dunham, hears that Rhode Islanders are down there, and the British want to take Fort Mifflin and Fort Mercer because it's a major way for them to get through their supplies and take control of Philadelphia. Well, Von Dunham goes, and right now there's about approximately 500 and 600 Continental troops of the Rhode Island Regiment at Fort Mercer. Well, down here, you have Dunham coming with about 12 to 1,400 Hessian and British troops. Well, he gets down there, and he's in for a rude awakening. The Americans, the Rhode Islanders, laid on him, and he ends up getting killed, and the Hessians retreat with massive, massive amounts of casualties. So now, I'm going to talk about Von Dunham real quick. Von Dunham, after all this happens, he's killed, right? Well, he can't get away from the Rhode Island Regiment because a year or two later, at the Battle of Springfield in New Jersey, they named a another detachment called the Von Dunham Detachment. And they get beat by the Rhode Islanders. And I find that funny because even after he died, the Rhode Islanders still beat him. If you think about it, right? He beat him at Trenton, they beat him at Red Bank, and now he's dead, and they still beat him. So just thinking about it that way, right? So it's very, very heavy losses for the British. So unfortunately, the Rhode Islanders end up, retreating and giving that up. So now he goes back up, and Rhode Island is hurting for recruitment drives. So they were like, let's try and get some African Americans. They saw that the British were doing it, and they were like, so they started the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. Now, if you look, a lot of people think that the Rhode Island African American Regiment was full of African Americans. It was only about 20% African American. And back then, that's a lot. If you think about it, a lot of African Americans, but you also had mixed in Native Americans as well. All right, and here you see, this is the monument up at Pines Bridge. This is from just what their uniform, the African American uniform, and this was at Yorktown. All right, good, thanks, Kiddo. All right, so the 1st Rhode Island Regiment was placed under General John Sullivan, okay? In August of 1778, the Battle of Rhode Island begins. Anybody know why the Battle of Rhode Island is important? Anybody? There you go, right? Newport was a massive trading hub. It was right there on the ocean, right? Slaves, molasses, and the British controlled it, okay? And here, Battle of Rhode Island begins. Colonel Christopher Greene commanded a brigade in the center of the battle, in the center order, meaning he was right there in the middle. His black regiment, the African American regiment, was positioned at the far right of the line and actually covered the retreat of the Continental Army at that time. All right, so now we're going to get back up towards New York. Okay, this is where the Battle of Pines Bridge is going to start coming into play. So everybody knows that New York was occupied through the whole entirety by the British Army. Okay, it served as the headquarters of the British. The Royal Navy was heavy up that way. They used raids, intelligence, and it was full of loyalists up that way as well. Westchester was a very violent border area. You had loyalists, and you had, they called them cowboys and skinners, and we'll get to that in a second. So right up New York, you had the Hudson. It was a massive transportation and communication hub. It was, the British were strategically using it to benefit trade, their naval power, and West Point controlled that whole Hudson Valley. And the British wanted West Point. So there are outposts all over the place. So now we come to the neutral ground. The neutral ground, which is Westchester County, lay between British and American lines. It's almost like, North Korea and South Korea, you have the deneutralized zone right there. That's what it was like, okay? Neither army controlled it. Civilians endured raids by the British loyalists, also known as the Cowboys. The Patriots, called Skinners, did the same thing. Warfare mixed with irregular violence, and we're going to see that here in a little bit. So here we go to the Cowboys and Skinners. Cowboys generally supported the British and raided for livestock. Skinners claimed Patriot allegiance, but also often preyed on the Patriot civilians. Both gathered intelligence and blurred military and criminal violence. Okay? So those Cowboys were listed or under a guy named Colonel James Delancey. He was a loyalist that was really a hardcore loyalist because the Continental Army took his land away after he refused to oblige to what they wanted. So he operated from the British sphere around New York. He used local knowledge, speed. His tactics were gruesome, and you'll see that here in a little bit. And his men were well known to be ruthless. Thank you, kiddo. All right, so now in this on one side you have Delancey, and on the other side you have Colonel Christopher Greene with the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, along with some detachments from New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Here they are in their headquarters at a house called the Davenport House. And I just want to mention this. So this is the front of the house right here now, but back then this was actually back of the house. Okay? So, and then you see down here, this is the back of the house. This is actually the front of the house. Okay? So reverse it. All right? And you're going to have to understand why, because it's pretty big. So and think of this, the back of the house, because there was a hill that came up, and then there was a carriage house. And unfortunately, I couldn't really find an image that showed both of them, but there was a massive hill that the Loyalists were able to come up. It became the center of the attack. Okay, here's a Google map. All right, so the Battle of Pines Bridge, right? About, if you see down here, right here, and then right here. So records still, I couldn't find anything to definitive. So there were 2 points that the British Loyalists under Delancey crossed. Here and here. The one mistake Colonel Christopher Greene made was the fact that he thought that the British could only cross at Pines Bridge. And they believe this is Pines Bridge right here, and there was a ford down here where the 2nd column under Delancey crossed. You can see how shallow and short the bridge would have to be in order to cross, okay? And then, oh, thanks, Grace. She gave me, there we go. So you can see here, right there, and up here is where the Davenport House, and if you look at the terrain, it's just wooded, and here, right about there, is where the carriage house is, and there's a hill that goes straight up. Delancey came from Arizona, which is a ways away. All right, so now, on May 14th of 1781, let me back up first. What happens was the Americans captured and detained a guy named William Totten, or Gilbert Totten, excuse me. Massive British loyalist, was not a fan of the African Americans. And what happened was he was threatening when he was released, because the Rhode Islanders didn't have enough to say he was a spy or whatever. Well, William Totten said, you know what, the next time I come up here, it's going to be a bloody flag, meaning he's going to kill a lot of people. Well, what records also showed was that at that same time, General George Washington had sent a letter to Christopher Greene stating, we need to capture Delancey. We need to either kill him or let him go, because he was causing so much damage to the livestock, to the food that the Continental Army was getting. So Washington put an order out. Well, when Totten was captured, he heard that. So when he was released, he said that to an African American guard and said, the next flag that's come up is going to be a bloody one. All right? So he leaves, and what does he do? He goes tells Delancey. He's like, hey, right now, they're planning on trying to come and attack you. Well, Delancey's like, okay, we won't play that game. We're going to attack them first. So now, let me go back up. Right here, on May 14th of 1781, right down here, what happened was Delancey waited until the sun was just about coming up and the guards were off duty. Christopher Greene was not aware, because he was thinking that they're only going to cross at the bridge. He wasn't expecting them to come down here, which I've had this conversation multiple times, is with a good military leader, you should always think about the things that you don't think are going to happen. So now, beginning of dawn, 1781, Delancey's troops attacked. They overwhelmed Greene. So going back to the Greene and Major Ebenezer flag, if you see, there's a window right here. Remember I said that's the back of the house. You see that square right here? Right? That is the window where Ebenezer flag opened the window and was shot. records show, and I actually got to speak to the owners of this house, and I was able to go in and see, and you can still see the musket ball holes. There were over 20 musket ball holes from when he opened that one window. So they had something. They were out for blood. They wanted him dead. They wanted that whole regiment dead. So Ebenezer Flagg, as soon as he opened that window, shot right through the head, and down he went. He died instantly. All right. So, and this is from, sorry, let me just grab my, so Lieutenant Colonel Jeremiah Oley, who's also another Rhode Islander, was there. He was off to the side. He stated, the advance guard of the American Army were on Croton River, which falls into the Hudson about 30 miles above New York. Over this were two bridges at several miles distance from each other. Near that, on the main road, was stationed the principal part of the guard, consisting of the whole of Major's command, a captain's command being detached some miles on the right and left, and small parties patrolled below the bridges. So if we go back to here, they were spread out all over here, right? Because he's up here. So that one column of Delancey comes up this way. They get bypassed and goes up here. These guys that are crossing here take control and capture all these guys down there. All right. So now, despite the security of Christopher Greene, or what he thought, the Loyals ended up coming up here and attacking Ebenezer Flagg. And I'm going to read you some contemporary descriptions from witnesses that were there. And they were talking about the brutality of actually what happened to Christopher Greene. States, the party who made the attack marched from Morazana under the command of Colonel Delancey and consisted of about 100 cavalry and 200 infantry. The Loyalists crossed the Croton River at a ford and divided the force. Because the Americans believed that the river could not be crossed at the ford, but only at the bridge, they were completely unprepared. So the attack occurred shortly before, on May 14, 1781. Inside the Davenport house was Colonel Christopher Greene, a couple of African-American soldiers, and Ebenezer Flagg. All right? States that when Davenport's house was taken, one Ackerley broke in. All right? So an Ackerley, one of the Loyals, broke in and entered first. Colonel Greene seized and threw him down and was on the point of dispatching him with his sword when he received a cut in the arm, which disabled him. Now, this cut in the arm, I mean, you think of swords back then, they're sharp, right? It almost severed his arm. Henry Lee later wrote, Greene continuing to resist even after receiving serious wounds, writing that he singly received them with his sword drawn until he was overwhelmed. Now, the most detailed description of the injuries appears in a letter written the day after the attack by Captain Thomas Hughes, who was the paymaster of the Rhode Island Regiment, writing to Greene's son on May 14, 1781. Hughes described the wounds inflicted during the assault. States his right wrist almost cut off in two places, his left in one. A severe cut in the left shoulder, a sword run through his body, a bayonet into his right side, another through his body, his head cut to pieces in several places, his back and body cut and hacked in such a manner as gives me pain to inform you. Now, if that's not brutal, I don't know what it is. That they went in there, and now, mind you, this guy's still alive. Colonel Christopher Greene is still breathing. Okay? So he's hanging on by dear life. All right? So, despite these terrible injuries, Greene remained alive, right? Hughes wrote that the Loyalists carried him away during their retreat, and he was carried about 3/4 of a mile from his home, from where he was, and where he fell off the horse due to blood loss, and where they left him to die. 3/4 of a mile away. And they left him to die in a pair of drawers and just a regular shirt. Thank you. Lydia Vale was a little girl who was there. She was about 10 at that time. Excuse me. She writes, as they approached the road near Pines Bridge, he collapsed from the loss of blood. Greene held on the horse till they were just coming out of the wood into the main road. He then fell off, and they found he had fainted and he was dying from the loss of blood. Then laid him down on the bank by the side of the road, and he passed on. So you think about that just for a second, right? All these wounds, he's fighting, he's bayoneted, and the guy's still alive. And after all that time, he goes out into the road and he dies alone. That, if you think about the brutality of that, that is something that you don't hear of nowadays, right? It shows the brutality of the Loyalists, the cowboys, right? And that they were actually out for blood. They wanted it. And one of the things that bothers me most, and I didn't put it in this, and it just came to mind. At the end of the war, Loyalists ended up going to Nova Scotia. They were running away. They were going to Canada. But there was a document that I found that stated that Delancey came and gave an officer from the Continental Army the handkerchief of Ebenezer Flagg and Christopher Greene, and they gave it to that Continental officer, and those handkerchiefs were covered in their blood. Now, if you think about it, I don't know if that was meant to be like ha ha ha, to rub it in, or to be like a gesture. But I was just thinking about it, and it's just, to me, it's brutal. It's not normal. But news reached Washington soon after the attack, and Washington was bummed because West Point's not far away, and if he had found out about the attack earlier, he would have been able to do something about it. He would have been able to come down and send troops and reinforcements. And he was friends. I mean, of course, we know he was friends with Nathaniel Greene, but he was also friends with Christopher Greene. Not Chris. So here we have the actual bridges of Pines Bridge and of where they cross. This is the original Pines Bridge right here. So Delancey's troops came over this bridge, and then this one is, you can see it here, and this is the second one that they were building over the top of them, the two areas where they cross. The terrain was had hills all over the place. It was perfect cover. But to me, Christopher Greene, his tale doesn't end there, right? Sorry, I got a little back up. His tale doesn't end there. Christopher Greene wasn't this big, massive hero like we think of Nathaniel Greene. He may have been smaller, but not a lot of people know him. But the sacrifice he took and what he went through up at Pines Bridge was astronomical. The amount of wounds he had, the fact that he commanded the 1st African American Regiment, right? Washington stated that they were one of the best fighting forces he's ever seen. And if you look through the rest of the war, right? Captain Olney ended up taking them, and they were the first over at Redoubt 10 at Yorktown, right? They were there. They fought like real soldiers. They fought like they knew how. They fought with purpose, and Washington admired that, and he knew that. So I'm gonna end with questions. I know I kind of went quickly through this, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time because I know we started a little bit late. So if you can see, George Washington has to tweet it. Anybody have any questions? I will do my best. I will say I am not 100% perfect. If I made a mistake, please let me know. I am willing to have a conversation just to get better myself. So anybody have any questions? If you want to turn on the lights, that'd be great. Thank you. Anybody?
Wow.
Jeez.
There you are.
So again, you know, Pines Bridge, not a big battle, but to me it shows Rhode Island actually taking the front and center. Anybody questions, concerns? Please let me know. Anybody? Perfect. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate it.
We're gonna take a 5 to 10 minute bathroom break, so if anybody needs to use the restroom, please do so now. When we come back, Joe Gennaro of the Veterans Council of Woonsocket will lead the Pledge of Allegiance before we get to our next speaker.
Also, sorry guys, real quick, I brought some actual artifacts in from the Revolutionary War. This is actually a newspaper from 1779. I will lay it out on the table if you guys want to take a look at it. It has a list of American prisoners. And then my daughter and I were related to a man named Oliver Wolcott who signed the Declaration of Independence. And we have some stuff that was written and signed by him as well. So come on up if you guys want.